odds are pretty good you've heard of Doki Doki Literature Club in some capacity. When it hit the PC space in 2017, the gaming community was abuzz about this wild, psychological horror masquerading as a dating sim. It even spent a brief period of time labeled as a, quote, killer game, unquote, that would influence children to do unspeakable acts. I didn't partake in the fervor of either side, but 4 years later, Doki Doki Literature Club finds itself with a physical release on consoles loaded with additional side stories and concept art. Since I'm a sucker for physical media and games that try to do something out of the ordinary, I figured now was as good a time as any to steal the hearts of 4 kawaii anime girls. And I can't believe I just wrote that sentence, but here we are, in 2022, where Pandora's box never seems to close. I want to state that Doki Doki is best played with as little information as possible, so if you plan on playing it, the TLDR of my review is I love it and I wish more games took risks like this one. Okay, let's get into it. Doki Doki Literature Club, or DDLC, chops up the cliches of anime and dating sims, flips them into something unrecognizable, and then blends them well with some of the best writing I've experienced in gaming. Although the writing is not as realistic as it is authentic, which is a big distinction I'll touch on later. The game focuses on who else but the player. From walking to school with your lifelong best friend to being forced to join a club filled with 4 attractive young women, DDLC doesn't shy away from its dating sim roots. The girls, Sayori, Monika, Yuri, and Natsuki, are immediately interested in the protagonist, and the flirtations are as subtle as the ending of Grave of the Fireflies. As the protagonist weaves their way into the inner workings of the group, it is determined that some writing assignments will help everyone bond. At this point, the player is given the assignment of writing poems to share with the club the following day. This basic minigame involves picking 20 words from a randomly selected list. Depending on what words are chosen, one of the girls will gravitate closer and closer with the player, which causes strife within the group. Paying attention to what the girls say and how they express themselves will help determine which words to pick to receive the desired affections. Outside of the poems and a few decisions, the gameplay largely consists of hitting the cross button over and over to move through the text fields. Gameplay is not Doki Doki's strong point, but believe me when I say, it doesn't really need engaging gameplay to keep someone invested. However, the game doesn't do itself any favors. Several times while playing the early parts of the game, I questioned if I'd made a horrible mistake playing this weird teen anime dating game in my mid-30s. But I pushed forward, wondering when the psychological horror the back of the box promised would kick in. In the meantime, I dealt with the awkwardness I felt whenever my wife entered the room to scenes like this. All the while, music cheerfully bubbles in the background, obnoxiously so when looped one too many times. Again, the expectations are met for those wanting the average dating sim. Although, to be fair, there are some good tracks sprinkled throughout the OST, which comes with Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. Menus and text use the brightest colors and fonts ripped from the cover of a Lisa Frank notebook. Background art is crisp and looks copied straight from your favorite high school anime. There are a couple scenes that are surprisingly well suited to capturing the emotions both the player and especially the girls are moving through. These well-crafted scenes are much more common in the side stories than the main game, and I think that's a good design choice for a variety of reasons I can't talk about without spoiling the story. While there aren't many of these CGs, as the game calls them, all of them showcase a deft artistry for lighting and mood. Despite the praise I just heaped, the presentation from top to bottom screams out that I would not enjoy this game despite how well put together it is. So if you're looking at what I'm presenting and thinking this looks like some otaku trash, I don't blame you. But I do urge you to give the game the benefit of the doubt like I did. It is at this point that I will do my best to tiptoe around spoilers while providing some insight into the heart of the game. After a certain event occurs in the narrative, the tone of the game shifts dramatically away from cutesy anime dating to a train wreck of anguish-ridden visuals, distorted and hollow music, and crooked, disfigured characters. All the pristine, saccharine constructions I've described thus far become tainted by strong, deep-seated fears, anxieties, and depressions. Character dialogue harshens, becomes abrasive towards the player and others, stabs at insecurities and cajoling remarks leading to conflict slide easily from the mouths of once innocent-seeming young women. Backstories unfurl like rotten flowers, spreading the stench of dark thoughts and precarious circumstances. The poems they share with the player, once bright with tinges of deeper meanings, color themselves in grays and blacks, the imagery and word choices springing from a well of torment and inconsolable loneliness. While the shift is sudden, the aftermath dramatic, and for some extremely distasteful or off-putting, it is this shift that the game is well known for that grabbed my full attention. I want to make it clear, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye, which can elucidate some of the game's darker moments and themes. While explanations cannot equal excuses, I found some of the more graphic scenes and motives made a lot more sense the deeper into the narrative and lore I dug. As someone who has struggled with depression and a general anxiety that basically froze me emotionally for over a year, I worried some of the places the dialogue of Doki Doki wanted to go would upset me. Not because I felt the topics were off limits, but because I had concerns that Doki Doki's creators didn't have the writing chops to pull it off without sounding contrived or offensive. I worried that mental health would be used as a hook for a shallow experience. There are scenes of graphic, sudden violence, moments that linger uncomfortably long on events I'd rather not stay to watch, and sentences that launch like cortisol-filled missiles, insinuating horrific abuses both external and within. I literally didn't want to move the dialogue forward at times because I knew what was coming. This game could easily be an edgelord's paradise, but that's not what I found. The attention paid to these crescendos and naders of emotion are not arbitrarily slapped together, and honestly reminded me of some of the more intense moments from one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Bojack Horseman. While the dialogue does not always ring as something a real person would say out loud, I think that's where the appeal of Doki Doki and Bojack comes from. These characters say and do things that are often internalized by real people. The consequences of taking the mask off or saying the quiet part out loud in real life disappear with animated characters. Many times while watching Bojack, I could point to the screen and say, I know that feeling, I know what that feels like. It feels like complete shit. There were several lines in DDLC that did the same thing. They spoke to me and clarified what I felt for a long time. I felt seen by this dumb, rainbow vomit-colored anime dating sim. I found that to be incredibly surprising and refreshing and liberating and exciting because someone seemed to get how these emotions take a toll on those who endure them. Just seeing the words on screen describe perfectly the way I felt was like finally seeing the monster under your bed in the daylight and realizing that monster is still there, but it doesn't have the same paralyzing fear over you because you know what it is, what it looks like, how it behaves. The monster is still dangerous, but at least you can better react to it. Both Bojack Horseman and Doki Doki Literature Club tread a fine line of providing a genuine experience and exploration of dark emotions while avoiding the pitfalls of becoming sadness porn or glorifying self-harming thoughts and actions. For some, Doki Doki won't successfully navigate these pitfalls. There are valid critiques of its presentation of mental health, and I'm not going to debate that. Everyone will view the sinister situations depicted differently. Nothing wrong with that. However, I do think Doki Doki Literature Club Plus alleviates some of these criticisms in a more direct way that sheds some light on why I think the original story handles mental health well. The plus in the title comes from the additional stories, which take place before the main game and are unlocked after completing it. These stories show a softer, less nuanced version of all four girls. We get to see how they met, how the club got started, but more importantly, the pretenses of horror are dropped entirely. The side stories are there for the fans of Sayori, Monika, Yuri, and Natsuki. These characters get to be people without the watchful gaze of the player interfering. Hardened and pronounced edges in Doki Doki are dulled by discussions about harmful friend groups, feeling sad when people care about you, learning to listen, and making tough choices for long-term well-being. I enjoyed all of these as a cleanser to the mood-destroying main plot. While I found the writing to be less interesting since a lot of the veiled motivations are now like an open book, they nonetheless do nothing but enhance the original Doki Doki. I recommend going through all of them and then replaying the main story if you want to feel even worse for some reason. As for the actual plot of the OG, again, I don't want to spoil anything. Just know it goes to very dark places and does an excellent job of both shocking and endearing the player. I'm afraid that's all I can say without ruining the experience. So, how do I wrap this up? Well, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus is an excellent, short, narrative-focused psychological horror with some heartwarming side stories to make you feel human again when it's all done. While I do highly recommend it, it will not be for everyone. The topics it covers can be sensitive. There is almost no gameplay, and some players will not be able to get beyond the aesthetic. But if you're like me, and you're a fan of games that try something different, I don't think you'll be disappointed by Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. Have yourself a good one, and take care of yourself.